Okay, we're starting our stream here. Let me see if this is actually working on YouTube's side. And I think that it is. So let's see. Can I get this to start being public? I believe so. Let's go ahead and save that. All right, so it would appear now that we're live, streaming live for the first time on the Mandarin Blueprint channel. I'm Phil Crimmins, for those of you who don't know me yet, and I know that we don't necessarily have any kind of setup for live streams previously, so we didn't have any kind of sense that we should, do this on a semi-regular basis or anything like that, but we'd like to get started with it. And I have no idea how long it takes for people to join, whether or not they end up being alerted about this or whatever. And so I thought for today, we would just have a little bit of a look into, I guess what you would say is like just a look into some phrases and some things that you could do to get better at starting off with Chinese. So when you're starting off, you're in a situation where you have these a million things to learn. You've got so many things to learn. You've got characters, pronunciation, individual phrases. Should you even bother with the characters? All of these things are important. So here's what I'll do. We have some people who are joining in. Hello to those of you who are here. This is our first ever live stream. And what I'm going to do while we wait for some more people to join is just share with you some photos from my life in China. Because at the end of the day, why are we doing all of this Chinese learning? Well, it's because we want to have some kind of an interaction with people in China, whether it's in China or it's Chinese people who are abroad. And I just wanted to show you some of the doors that have opened now that I learned Chinese. So this is actually a funny story, this picture. So this is my band from kind of the middle part of my time living in China. The singer there, Jody, she's from the UK. Excellent singer, very professional, always knew what she was doing. And Mark, the guy on the right there playing keyboard, he's an American guy from New York, and we've played probably more gigs together than any other person. There's me in the background, and my buddy Nelson there on the saxophone. He is actually the voice of the Mandarin Blueprint listen and repeat audio files, which is quite funny that he ended up doing that. But he's got this great voice for radio. So, so this is all just to say that this experience of playing gigs in China never could have happened if I hadn't learned how to speak Chinese. So I played drums, and many of you have an individual skill that you already have applied to your life in some way, but you haven't necessarily thought, what if I did that same skill but in China? And that is it's often the case that there's like a Western cultural skill, like perhaps really studying music as a kid. It's not that Chinese people don't study music as much, they're just very academically focused as children, and so therefore the extracurricular programs at their high schools don't tend to be as well developed. I actually taught drums at a high school in Sichuan, like sort of the Sichuan University High School. It's kind of weird, but it's like right next to Sichuan University in Chengdu. So the high school there had a music program, but it was very underdeveloped. Like the kids they didn't have time for it. They were so focused on all the other academic stuff. So when I was in high school, I learned how to play drums. By learning how to play drums, I was then able to go to China and have bands with Chinese people and other foreigners, and there was a demand for it because we just had this skill and this also, I mean, admittedly a little bit of the status. We've got a band of foreigners playing at our wedding, right? And so by learning to get Chinese going, I was able to be able to play all these gigs. And I remember the first time that I was messaging with an agent on WeChat saying, hey, my band has these credentials, this is how much we would charge, etc., etc. And it was a success. and it was a back and forth with Chinese characters. And I remember in that moment going, this is a real milestone. I just booked a gig for my band using Chinese, which I've been working very hard at learning. And you could do the same thing, but in your field. So whatever your field is, it's probably less competitive as a foreigner in China. But of course, the barrier to entry is you would have to go to China and learn Chinese. But if you go to China and learn Chinese, there are so many opportunities for you as a Westerner. This was one of the example for me. And by the way, funny story about this particular gig. You'll notice in the background it says, "Will you marry me?" And this guy who proposed to his girlfriend, that's what this event was for, he really didn't give her any choice in the matter, in the sense that he had this big sign that said, "Will you marry me?" All of his friends were around, and when he asked the question, all of his friends were immediately like, say yes, say yes, say yes. And she was just put under so much pressure. And I looked at the look on her face, and as far as I could tell, she might not have said yes if she hadn't had all that pressure. And I just thought to myself, wow, like that was really quite the experience. Oh, cool. So we have some people coming in here. 你好，大家好。我喜欢课程. That would mean I like courses. If you want to say that you like courses that are like specifically maybe our courses at Mandarin Blueprint, you might say, 我喜欢汉语蓝图的课程. So 汉语蓝图, that's Mandarin Blueprint, really Chinese Blueprint, but Mandarin is 普通话, the universal language. It's not really, like I'd rather not say Mandarin 普通话蓝图. Nah, 汉语蓝图, that sounds pretty cool. So anyway, we now have several people in here. That's cool. I mean, like I said, we've never done this before, so this is really kind of exciting. That's my band again. This is another band. This would be about 2017 at Temple House. This guy Harrison is an Australian-based player. Excellent guy there. Oh, this is a little speech I was giving at the 天府杯创业大赛初赛, right, which was the entrepreneurship competition in Chengdu. I believe this was 2017. So I don't know if you probably can't hear the audio for that, but I was giving a speech to this group. So this was giving an example of how to teach Chinese. And I was giving this speech to Chinese people, which is kind of funny, but it actually does make sense because Chinese people are like, it's like being born rich when it comes to Chinese. Like, they never had to learn as adults, so the idea of learning, it's like asking Paris Hilton, how do you get rich? It's like, she's like, I was just born rich. But if you ask Warren Buffett, he was born not rich at all and became very rich, so you'd want to ask him. And so that's kind of what I was teaching to them. I was like saying, hey, if you guys are going to teach Chinese, you should focus on these things that foreigners will understand. And it really went over well. In this initial competition, we actually came in second place, which was pretty cool. Taylor says, starting from zero, I've been watching a lot of your videos recently, and they're very helpful. Impromptu trip to Shanghai next month. That's awesome. Congratulations. So, let's take a look at some phrases, because I want to show you guys. Let's see here. Still getting used to. Oh, I think this is the one, right? So if I go over here, aha, there we go. All right. So I wanted to just go over with you guys some phrases to get started, because when you're learning Chinese, you want to start by having some listen and repeat of the very basics, okay? So what I'm talking about here are things that are so common, things that people say so much that you don't necessarily need to build bottom up in order to be able to reach a decent competency. So, for example, the words like good or fine or he, him, she, her, you, me, in this case, he, she, and it are all ta. But there's certain words that are used so much that instead of having to build from the foundation, where you have a character component into a character, into words, into sentences, into paragraphs, into stories, you can just repeat them enough that you'll remember them, simply for the fact that you're definitely going to get automatic repetitions just based on their frequency. It's the whole 80-20 rule, right? So the most frequent words in the language are so common that you don't even really need to do it from the from that sort of methodical bottom-up approach, right? So nice. And just like I said, I am brand new to streaming, so I'm just seeing these different comments coming in. We have JMW saying, "Ni hao, been watching your videos and studying solo, put a lot of emphasis in learning zi, not zi, but just feel like I'm not getting anywhere." Right. So learning a Chinese character, which is a, let's write that here, it's a zi, that's the right character. Learning a Chinese character is essential. It's necessary, but not sufficient, right? So if you learn Chinese characters, you will be able to reach long-term fluency and long-term proficiency because the language has so few syllables. It's very hard to auditorily distinguish between the different sounds that Chinese people are making, because in English we have around 16,000 syllables, but in Chinese there are only around 420 minus tones. So if you don't know the characters, which are highly visually distinct, then you're going to struggle, and by the way, I'm talking about Mandarin Chinese here, you're going to struggle to distinguish between the sounds the more advanced you get. At the beginning, you don't need to be super focused on characters right away. You can focus on pronunciation and get some of the basic phrases down. But I knew several people in China who didn't learn, foreigners in China, who didn't learn how to do anything with the characters, and then they ultimately ended up hitting a ceiling because just too many words sounded alike. It's not literally impossible, but it's a really, really big ask to try to figure everything out without learning the characters. And besides, if you don't learn the characters, you can't read, so therefore you're missing out on one of the best sources of comprehensible input. And I'll get back to that in a second, but you also are missing out on the most interesting part of the language. I mean, Chinese is a logographic language, and the characters are beautiful. They have a lot of history to them. And yes, the simplification of the characters made them comparatively less interesting. Although, you know, people tend to go like, oh, the simplified characters have they're nothing compared to the traditional characters. And I don't think that's true either. It's just they were made, you know, differently. Some of the different components were simplified, right? But there's still a lot of the history that you can find in the simplified characters. And so, yeah. So, what's a cool way to say hello? Hello. You can just say that. You can also say, you can say hey. That's fine. Even hi. Like, hi, that's fine too. Those are obviously borrowed. Ni hao is still the most common. Like, sometimes people will say, Chinese people don't say ni hao, and that's totally not true. They absolutely say ni hao. In fact, when they're on the phone, you'll learn answering the phone is wait. But most of the time, in my experience, people go, wait, ni hao, right? So, like, they're instantly saying, like, wait, it's kind of that answering the phone word, but then they immediately say hello. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. 再见 from Germany. Good to see you. I still have issues with pronouncing C and ZH. Right, so, okay, so this is a good question. This is a thing that bothers people all the time. And by the way, I think you can see on the screen here, we have a course all about this called Pronunciation Mastery, but we also have a free YouTube video. So if you go, you're obviously on our channel right now. If you go to our channel and look up the most viewed videos, long form videos, you'll probably find it. It's like a Chinese pronunciation guide. It's a lot packed into an hour, but we do cover all of the basics of pronunciation. And then the 8-hour course Pronunciation Mastery is like really taking our time with it and making sure everything is clear. But to give you the help now, C, here's one of the best things you can do with C. So let me show you this. So as we can see here, we have my cat Rick. And if we had two cats, I just said the Chinese C sound. Cats. The TS in cats is the same way that you produce the C pinyin in Chinese. So suppose we had CAO. Cao, cat, cao, cao, cao. And so you put your tongue kind of behind your top teeth, like around where the gums meet the teeth. Some people, it's fine to actually be on the back of your front teeth. Cao, cao. Everybody's mouth is shaped slightly differently, so that's why I give a little bit of variance there. But the tip of your tongue should be around the back of your back of your front teeth. And that's what you do. And it's aspirated, so air comes out. Cat. Tai, tao, tongue. Right? So you get that T, like sort of TS sound there. And then in the case of ZH, you said, isn't that a swear word? No, tao is not a swear word. Tao is a swear word. The fourth tone there. But ZH, the ZH is your tongue. Like if you imagine that this is a profile of your tongue. So you profile your tongue, you pull your tongue back, and then you go from there. Oh, hang on a second. Did I lose? I'm looking at the live stream. I seem to have. Oh, no, we're good. Okay. So you pull your tongue back like this. So, and for all of them, your tongue just sticks there like that. It's called a retroflex sound. And for the ZH, it sounds a little bit like a J in English, but with a totally different tongue position. So, 知道. That's the word for to know in Chinese. 知. And that, we cover that in pronunciation mastery, all of the difficult initials. We call them problem initials because Chinese only has about 420 syllables, and that can sound intimidating for a second. I mean, it's not that many syllables compared to other languages, but it's only about half of them that contain an element that is difficult for non-natives to learn. So if you have good instruction combined with good practice through various flashcards, doing listen and repeat programs, you can actually get Mandarin pronunciation pretty down in a relatively short amount of time. And that opens up, obviously, not only Chinese people respecting how you sound, but also you'll be able to hear people better. When you can articulate the sounds of the language, you can hear people much better. So, yeah, let's see here. 相信 versus 伤心. Finding I struggle with listening and telling the difference with similar sounding words. Yeah, it's a common, this is a common issue that people will have at the beginning. And it's totally understandable because, you still have to get the reps in, the mental reps. But also you have to practice the xiang, that's tongue against back of your rotten teeth. Xiang, xin, xiang, xin. Right? And that, your tongue never moves with that particular word, 相信, which means to believe. And then 伤心, that's where your tongue goes retroflex for 伤, and then it goes, again, back against the rotten teeth for 心, 伤心, and their two first tones. It's one of those things that, time and practice does get you there because pronunciation, unlike other elements of the language, does have an element of going to the mouth gym, and it does relate to how you hear other people speaking. So I think that you'll get that going as you keep practicing. Okay, so I would say we have a question from Jeffrey. As a Mandarin novice, should I focus more on vocabulary or grammar? Definitely vocabulary as a novice. Don't worry about grammar. Grammar was never acquired through learning grammar rules in your native language. So clearly a human brain is capable of acquiring grammar subconsciously. The way that you acquire grammar properly is you get as many messages into your eyes and ears in the target language as possible that you can understand. if you understood the message, you can trust the evolution of the brain, which, human beings have the ability to speak language. You can trust that that process will start to happen. Now, you need a lot of understandable messages. There's no way around it. It takes a while to get to the point where your brain pattern recognizes enough of the different sentence patterns to see, oh, this is what it is. And when you go to speak, it will just be there for you if you've gotten enough understandable messages. If you haven't gotten enough understandable messages and you go to output, it's going to be choppy. You're not going to know what to say, and the word is not going to be there for you. And what happens if you study grammar too much is you give yourself the illusion that you understood how to produce the grammar, when really all you've understood is the same thing that like a linguist understands about how a language is structured. But that doesn't mean that when you're in a conversation with somebody that the grammar point will come out. It's very unlikely at that point, because just knowing the intellectual academic rule, like in Chinese, you put ba before an object followed by a verb and the resultative complement, right? You can master that rule. It doesn't mean that you will use it correctly in conversation. So I would say don't focus on grammar too much. It's okay to occasionally read about a grammar rule, but no more than 1 to 2% of your time trying to acquire grammar should be doing that. The rest of it should be getting as many messages into your eyes and ears as possible. Nice. Okay. Oh, Taylor says there's some humming going on. Well, not sure why, but, like I say, first time live streaming, so I'm not surprised there would be some kind of, a little bit of, growing pains. All right. The retroflect is so hard for me. I'm guessing practicing with a mirror may help. Sure. And also, like I said before, it's the mouth muscle problem. Like, in the same way that if I've never gone to the gym ever, the first day I can barely, curl 5 pounds, right? But then after you keep getting better and getting better, then your gains go up sort of more. You get that fast growth period, and then it sort of levels off. So you need to do that with your mouth as well. They have to get used to, because you never used your mouth in this way your whole life, right? So there is a physical element going on that you must master, and the only way to do it is through reps. But mouth muscles are small, so it's not like we're asking you to take your quadriceps and make them twice the size. If you have, the way that you shape your tongue, and apparently your tongue is like the strongest muscle in your body, like by square centimeter or something like that. And so, you build up those muscles fairly quickly, but there is a period where you have to practice a lot. And if you don't practice for a few days, you'll lose it, that type of thing. Okay. Let's see here. Wish you could like this much more than once. So good. Thank you. Do you have a list of words to start with for beginning learning Mandarin? Oh, yeah, gotcha, Taylor. Thank you. Let's see here. Hi from Brazil. Yeah, let's get into some of the stuff that I wanted to cover today in the live stream, because it's relevant to what C and MA asked. Do you have a list of words to start for the beginning learning Mandarin? Well, the Mandarin Speaking and Listening Kickstarter is a program that we made to try to help with that very beginning side of things. So let's just go through some of these phrases. And the goal I had for this live stream was to go through the first lesson and just have some phrases there. What you're looking at on screen is the course platform of Mandarin Blueprint. And this is the first lesson of Mandarin Speaking and Listening Kickstarter. Now, the first thing we teach you in this course is how to say you, ni, you, ni. And this one's pretty easy. I mean, it's a simple pronoun, so you can kind of get a pronoun like that down very quickly. All of the vocabulary in the Mandarin Speaking and Listening Kickstarter is the highest frequency, so that's the type of thing you'll hear all the time. Then you can have another word, hao. This means good, fine, okay, hao. Like if you just respond to somebody, they're asking you, how do I, I'm going to be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. and you just say, hao. That would mean fine. It's okay. So you can say you, ni and hao. And sorry, good, fine, or okay. Hao. And by the way, when you say hao, the H sound in Chinese has that little bit of an kind of like chutzpah or loch, like the Scottish would say, right? It's got that just that little bit of. I remember my teacher Yo Lao Shi, who actually I can put a face with the name because I've got my photos up here. Let me put this up. He Yo Lao Shi. Here he is. This is the man. Whenever he was in class and he was teaching us, he would say "很好." That means very good, right? 很好. It was really kind of cool to hear that. So the H in Chinese is very similar to the H in English, just a little stronger, a little more aspirated, a little more chutzpah to it, as it were. And so, yeah, oh gosh, I have so many good things I could say about this guy. He was the one professor I had at Sichuan University who understood that you need to learn Chinese character by character. He was my thesis advisor, and thanks to a lot of his help and, a bit of and putting a lot of effort into it, I got this outstanding thesis award. And so I wanted to get a picture with him because, that was it's actually that outstanding thesis award is a university-wide award, and they only give out like 3, and so it wasn't like just the school for Chinese they gave him out. So the man rules because he was very helpful to me during that. So anyway, going back to what I was saying before, let's see here. Sorry, I'm still getting used to the old live streaming software. So, continuing here, so you say ni for you, hao with that slightly chutzpah thing, and then ni hao. Now this is just hello, and literally it means you good, but this is how Chinese people say hello, ni hao. Now, you'll notice here that ni hao is 2 third tones. But Chinese there is no such thing as 2 third tones in Chinese. Whenever you have 2 third tones in a row, they're still written this way, but you pronounce the first one as a second tone. Ni hao. And it's almost cruel to foreigners learning because it's like, oh, the word that I'm trying to learn, the very first one has an unwritten rule. Like you don't see that this is second tone. Right, but if you do get it right, though, Chinese people will be very impressed because they'll be like, "Oh, cool, you got it right." Ni hao, ni, raise up, ni hao with that chutzpah there. Okay, so going down, then the next word you learn, ta, ta. T in Chinese is a bit more aspirated. And by aspirated just means lots of air comes out. So in English, you'll say, Tom, right? His name is Tom. In Chinese, it would be, his name is Tom. Ta, right? So just hit that T hard, and then you get he or him. So now we have 2 pronouns, you and he or him. It's pronounced the same for she and it, but for now, we'll just stick with he or him. So we have you, good, hello, and you good. So pretty cool, right? Ta hun. Now, I like this word because hun is often translated as very. And this is somewhat of a mistranslation a lot of the time. It can mean very, and it means very when it comes before a psychological verb, like the word for love in Chinese is ai. So if you said 很爱, it means really love. Like you're adding a modifier to love and saying really love. But if I just say he is fine, 他很好, the 很 actually would be better translated as is, because there's no other way to say he is fine than 他很好. You can't just say 他 you can't just say 他好, right? Because that would mean technically that could be used in a certain way, but not to say he is fine. And this is all just to say that the translation that is usually taught is kind of wrong. And so, this is yet another example of how like native teachers often don't know how to teach properly. So, okay, I'm just going to take a break here at 5 words and look at some of these questions here. So YT says, hello, I'm up to 380 characters, went to Shenzhen recently, and my boyfriend said, 我女朋友兔子 instead of 我女朋友吐了. That was funny, but it was amazing to try to use some Mandarin. All right, nice. Went to Shenzhen recently, and my boyfriend said, are you saying that he said, like, 兔子 is a rabbit, and 吐了 would mean vomited, right? So maybe you can clarify what you mean by that, because your boyfriend said that. Is your boyfriend Chinese? Or both you and your boyfriend are not Chinese? Or, yeah, anyway. Thanks for live streaming. Do you have any material, suggestions, podcasts, TV shows, etc. for novice level comprehensible input? Yeah, I really like the podcast 狗熊有话说. That's literally dog bear has something to say. And it's called bear talk is the English word. So 狗熊. Oh yeah, you're right. The zoom in I did on the screen messed things up. Let me undo that. Let me just write in that podcast here into the chat. 狗熊有话说. The reason why I like 狗熊有话说 is because he covers a lot of good material that is interesting, like tech stuff, life, traveling abroad, things like that. And he doesn't do he just doesn't do too much stuff that is, boring. There's almost always some kind of interesting topic he has, but mainly his voice is very easy to understand. He speaks kind of slowly, and he's got a very nice sounding voice. So I would definitely recommend him. There's a whole app called 得到, and yes, he is native. 得到, which is this app. I mean, it's probably more advanced, to be honest, but it comes from this guy, 罗振宇, who did a podcast for years called 逻辑思维, which he changed the 逻 in 逻辑, which just means logic, to the same 逻as his last name. And it just is like logical thinking with 逻. And it's just philosophical podcasts. They're very interesting, but it is kind of advanced. They do speak very standard Mandarin, though, so you can count on... and he's also very like bubbly and nice and very excited and optimistic about everything, so he's fun to listen to. And they do have on that 得到 app, which honestly I don't know how easy it is to get access to it when you're not in China, but it's great. Lots of good content there. Okay, let's see here. If it hurts or feels uncomfortable, then you know you're creating new tongue patterns. Call it growing pain. Yeah, this is great. Yeah. Quebec. That's Quebec, I would assume. I actually never... See, what's cool about Chinese is that even though I never have consciously thought of Quebec as like what the name of Quebec is in Chinese, I just read that and it's a Quebec. And it's like, what's cool is it sounds like Quebec, but also you have Bay in there, which means north, and Quebec is of course up north. So the Chinese, they're very clever sometimes with how they come up with the names of like English things. Okay. Julio Alberto, hey Phil, the Mandarin Blueprint is really amazing. Congrats on such a well-designed course. Well, thank you. I love what the Blueprint has become. And we're continuing to expand on a number of different things. And by the way, guys, anybody watching, if you're interested, we're going to be having a promotion later this month for this Kickstarter course that I've been showing you a little bit about. And this course is basically a starting course for beginner phrases with listen and repeat audio. And we're also going to have a couple of special additions to it that's coming at the end of June. And if you want to hear about it, in the description for this live stream, there's a quiz, a little scorecard, a little Mandarin fluency scorecard fill that out. And when you fill that out, we'll send you the results to your email, and we'll also send you the promotion when it comes later this month. We'll put you on a wait list to hear about that promotion. It's not a very expensive course, but it's something that we're we just want to see how this goes, like live streaming, talking to you guys about, what we're doing with our courses. I want you to, and even if you don't, get that promotion, I want you to learn a few things about how to get started with learning Chinese. It's very important. And I'm glad to see that so many of you have been asking questions about pronunciation, because that is really key when you're starting off. All right. All right. Oh, Raphael is in here. Nice. Hey, Raph. Okay. Yeah, so Erica's asking if we have traditional characters in the Mandarin Blueprint method. No, we don't at the moment. It's one of those things that we want to add at some point, but when we were learning Chinese, we were in mainland China, and they use simplified characters there. And of course, the vast majority of people who speak Mandarin are in mainland China. So we learned that, and then what happened is, we built out the blueprint, and the blueprint is a very comprehensive course that includes simplified characters. And the problem is, once you build the course, then if you want to incorporate traditional characters, it's kind of tricky, because some simplified characters you can teach very early because they have simple components. But then when you look at the traditional version of that same character, it's not so easy to learn in an early stage. So it's one of those things that's going to require a lot of research and a project and all of that. And the truth of the matter is that it's just not likely to happen in the next few quarters, because we have all these big projects we want to do first. But you can easily jump from simplified to traditional. In fact, I never consciously learned traditional characters, and it's therefore a bit more of a struggle for me than it is to read simplified Chinese. But because I've read so much simplified Chinese, I can often figure out what the traditional characters are. Occasionally I can't, if it's like really different. But a lot of times the difference between a simplified and a traditional character is just one thing, or it's two small things, and then every now and then it's a majorly different character. Or sometimes it's two traditional characters got simplified down into one. And when that happens, then yeah, that can be tricky. Okay. All right, a couple more questions here. Hey Phil, I just bought the Mandarin Blueprint course. Should I consider getting this new course you're planning to launch in late June? What's the main difference? Well, first of all, it's going to be a little bit later than late June. We wanted to release it in late June, but they say if it's hard to make, that means it's valuable, and it has been. We're working on it every day, but in order to do the right quality control, make sure that it's the best type of Chinese, we've just realized that it's not going to be ready by the end of June. We're going to shoot for the end of July. We'll see if we can pull that off. But yeah, that is called the phrase vault. So the best way I can describe what the phrase vault is to compare bottom-up and top-down learning. So the blueprint is bottom-up learning. Foundation building is for long-term fluency for life. It's to learn characters. Like, you can think of it like this. I have a perfect example of this in this course that I can just show you that will make this all very clear. So let me just go back to the Speaking and Listening Kickstarter here. Just make sure it's showing correctly. Okay, and then I think it's in this section. Yeah, what the heck are we even doing in this course? So in this, I show you this idea. I say, okay, here's a sentence. 我需要去急诊室. I need to go to the emergency room, right? Here's the question. How should you learn this phrase, right? And one is to learn it bottom up. Step 1, understand the 5 Mandarin tones. Step 2, learn the 21 pinyin initials. Step 3, add the 36 pinyin finals. So now we have the pinyin for the whole sentence, which includes all of these finals, all of these initials, all of these tones. Step 4, practice and easily produce the approximately 19 components that make up the sentence, which are all of these. And then you have master the 9 characters that are components in the full characters for the sentence. For example, 虚 is a combination of the full characters 语 and 儿. So here we have those. Then memorize the 7 characters that make up the sentence. 我需要去急诊 是. Like, like anxious diagnosis room. Combine those characters with other characters you know to learn frequent words, right? So this sentence is actually 我需要去急诊室. So that's, you could do that. Then you produce the sentence. And if you did that, you wouldn't make it to the emergency room. You'd die first, right? So that is not the best method for a targeted surgical thing that you need to learn. But it's great. The bottom-up method is great if you want to reach long-term fluency and have, high-level proficiency. So the second option is to learn it top-down. And top-down is basically listen and repeat the sentence 15 to 20 times and make sure that you have an SRS. So that would be all you have to do. So if you just needed to ask, where is the emergency room, you better learn top-down. And so the disadvantage of the method, obviously, is that you're not going to get the foundational knowledge, and so applying it to new ideas is hard. So the advantage is it's fast enough to potentially save your life. And so how should you learn that phrase? You should learn that top-down. The Phrase Vault is a top-down course that focuses on individual life situations. There's going to be over 7,500 phrases. There will be 350 lessons, about 130 different life situations. Each lesson has about 15 to 30 phrases in it, each with its own listen and repeat audio, flashcards, all the good stuff you need, so that instead of always having to learn bottom up by going components, characters, compound words, sentences, paragraphs, short dialogues, opinion pieces, longer form stories, and graded fairy tales, graded articles like we do in the blueprint. Instead, you'll focus on doing, I want to know what to say in the pharmacy. Go to that lesson, right? And what's cool, though, is that because we have the blueprint, the Phrase Vault is going to be totally integrated with the blueprint in the sense that when you know all the characters from a lesson in the Phrase Vault, when you're going through the blueprint, we'll tell you. We'll say, hey, by the way, now that you've been going through the blueprint, you know all the characters in the travel and directions category air travel lesson. And so if you want, you can go over and check it out. So it's pretty cool. It's actually, I'm very excited about it because it's the kind of thing that's going to really be a game changer. So as for whether or not you want to get that policy of truth, obviously up to you, but I would recommend it because if you have both a bottom-up and a top-down approach, they eventually meet, and then you're getting the best of both worlds. You're learning surgically what you want to learn while also building your foundations and making sure you understand how the language functions. Okay. What's up, Phil? I have questions from Jerry. If I were to learn Mandarin, is it understood in Shanghai or even everyone in China? Because I have seen a lot of things about dialects and whatnot. Yeah, there are a lot of dialects in China, but Mandarin is the common tongue. It's the language that the government decided a long time ago now. It just beat out Sichuanhua in a vote. I think it was like 150 years ago or something. Is going to be the language of the political class and therefore the news class. And so it's just sort of the language that they use to connect all the different regions, the spoken language. It's actually kind of cool about China is that the different dialects have always been connected. Well, sorry, like in Chinese history, the thing that has kept China continuing to reunite after it breaks apart. If you look at Chinese history, there's a lot of breaking apart and reuniting. One of the things that makes that possible, it's not the only thing, one of the things that makes that possible is the fact they have a logographic writing system. So you can have different spoken languages that use the same writing system. So even if you don't understand each other, you can still communicate. In medieval Europe, if you were Polish and you knew the written Polish language, you couldn't communicate with somebody who's French because they're phonetic languages, so it's based on how it sounds. So it's interesting to think maybe how Europe might have developed differently if they all shared the same logographic language. But alternate history and all that. But my point is, in Shanghai, they will definitely know Mandarin. And also because Shanghai has so many people who are not from Shanghai that live there, then the local dialect, while still spoken by quite a few people, the average person you'll meet, they speak their local dialect from somewhere else in China, and in Shanghai they use Mandarin with everyone. So Mandarin is kind of like the lingua franca of China, whereas English is the lingua franca of the world. So think of it like that. There's a scene in Lord of the Rings where Frodo is looking at the ring, and there's the Mordor language on the ring, and Gandalf says, in the common tongue, it says, one ring to rule them all. And I thought, yeah, that's what Mandarin is. It's the common tongue of China. So yes, people will totally understand. Okay. What's the Chinese way of saying traditional and simplified? Well, in the case of characters, it's fan ti zi. That's complicated body character, fan ti zi. And then the simplified character is jian ti zi, simple body character. So ti is the word for body in general, or some system, but like, so you could think of it as complicated system characters or simple system characters. Ti is the character in shen ti, which is the general word for body, like 这是我的身体, and also the word for health. So you could think of it as my body system. So how's your body system is a way of saying how's your health. 他的身体好不好, right? So 繁体字, 简体字. What will the new course be about? Yeah, you got it there. 我钥匙掉了. 我要死掉了. SRS, right. SRS stands for Spaced Repetition Software. And think of it like this. The best way to understand SRS is it's a AI memory secretary. So there's all this research about memory that says that if you recall something, every time you call it back from your unconscious mind, so you learn a fact, it leaves your conscious mind, and then you fish it back up. You fish hook it back into your conscious mind later. That's called recalling. That's why looking at the same fact over and over and never going away from it is not actually very effective to learn something. You know, you're just like, okay, in Chinese, you know, how do you say is? You say hun, 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 hun. It's not like doing those extra reps means nothing. It's just less effective than going, okay, hun is or very. Okay, great. And then go away from it for a little bit. Think about something else, work on something else, and then recall it back into your conscious mind. That's a proper recollection. When you have that recollection, what's happened is that you strengthen the memory and you increase the amount of time you need before you need to see it again. So if I see something for the first time, I need to see it again in like 1 minute, or otherwise I'm going to forget it because it's a brand new fact. But then in 1 minute, I only need to see it maybe 10 minutes from now. And then once I see it a third time, 10 minutes from now, then I can see it a day from now. And then when I see it a day from now for the fourth repetition, now I can see it 4 days from now. The research shows that if you get this interval correct, then you can have a 90 to 95% retention rate. Now, there's no such thing as a 100% retention rate because we're not computers. But if you can have a 90 to 95% retention rate, then what the spaced repetition software is doing for you is instead of requiring you to figure it out, like how often should I review this particular fact and keep track of, okay, I've gotten this right 4 times, and now the interval should be 9 days. Spaced repetition software just does that all for you. You mark yourself correct or incorrect, and it goes, okay, based on my algorithm, that means that you don't need to see this fact again for 12 days. And then the result, how you actually experience it day to day, is that the facts or the pieces of language, the Chinese character, the pronunciation, the compound word, the ones that you're seeing in your review queue are the ones that you're struggling with more, and the ones that you're not struggling with, you don't see that often, right? So if you know the word 你好, meaning hello, you don't need to be seeing that in your flashcards every day. So it'll have a long interval, all right? But if you have a word that's been giving you some trouble and you keep forgetting it, well, every time you hit wrong, it resets the algorithm. And it goes, okay, we'll show you this again in 10 minutes, show you in a day, show you in 4 days, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what SRS is. Long answer. Duolingo is top-down. Yes, it is top-down, and top-down alone is no good. You have to have top-down combined with bottom-up. And really, if you were only going to do one, I would say do bottom-up, because then you can actually maintain the knowledge. So like bottom-up learning is like building a bunch of bricks and building a great foundation for a house. And so even if you stop building the house for a little bit, when you come back, you have less work to do. Whereas if you learn top-down, it's like you set up a couple of sticks to hold up the roof for a second just so you can focus on, you know, the thing you want to learn. But if you go away for a day, the wind blew it over, you lost it, right? So bottom-up and top-down together is the best, but if you just do top-down, your memory will be like a leaky sieve. So yeah, okay, cool. Let's see here. Thanks for the answer, sure. Is the HSK1 word list an important list for novice Mandarin speakers? I mean, it's kind of interesting. I don't recommend following the HSK in general, but with the HSK1, you know, the most frequent words, everybody kind of knows what the most frequent words are. I still look at the HSK1 word list and I can't fathom how they chose certain words. I'm like, why is that what you would teach? That should be done way later. But you know, academics, right? I spent all this time in university, and you know, just going back. This is from university. That's my university graduation. These are some guys I did business with at one point. But my time at university taught me a lot about the situation with how, like, the academic approach to Chinese is so regimented because they have to give you exams, and of course they do, because if they don't give you exams, how do they know if the teachers are doing well, etc.? They have no method by which to judge your success. But the problem is that the most success you can have learning Chinese is very eclectic. Making a table of Chinese people laugh when you're out to hot pot, that's proof that you can speak Chinese. Like, I never need to show Chinese people my degree in the Chinese language. I just talk to them, right? Like, they know I can speak because they're having a conversation. So the academic approach is fundamentally trying to put a round peg into a square hole, because you're trying to make everything testable, even though the real test is living your life. So the HSK word lists aren't really that effective, but the HSK1, because everybody knows what the highest frequency words are, they're probably useful. But yeah, I would not recommend using the HSK too much. Okay. 但这不能一起去 KTV. 你好. All right. I have a question. Would you recommend following the accent of people you're talking to? For example, speaking Hong Kong style Mandarin if you're living in Hong Kong, or trying your best to speak standard? Well, I mean, as you're developing your accent, I think that you want to mimic lots of different people. There's kind of there's a fine line. If you were to go to the South or something, you know, I live in Texas now, and if somebody came up to you and they're like, "Hey, how you doing there?" And then you just were like, "I'm doing just fine." Like, and that wasn't your real accent, it would kind of be, the minute they found out that you were just mimicking them, they'd probably be like, "What?" You know? So, but it's a fine line because they know you're learning too, and Chinese people are so nice. When you're trying to explain something to, like, or you're trying to communicate with a Chinese person, and you mimic how they're speaking, and you're trying, they're like so delighted that you're even trying. So that's what gives me pause about it. Like, there's the general human relations thing, which is that people don't like to be mimicked or what they might see as being mocked. But on the other hand, because Chinese people are so nice and they're so impressed that you're trying to learn the language, you know, it's kind of interesting there. So I would say you can mimic it, but at some point you probably want to pick a language or an accent, I guess. You know, there's this guy on YouTube called Da Kang, and he has this strong 北京话。大家好，我是大康，今天我们要说说台湾的情势。Like that type of thing. And he's got this very like strong Beijing accent, and I like it. I think it sounds great. But I'd say just go for standard Mandarin at the beginning, and then when you get good, you can try to, adjust it a little bit. Okay. Oh, nice. Jacques is from Texas as well. I'm not really originally from here, but I live here now. It's just in Taiwan, for example, they don't distinguish much between si and shi. Neither do they in Sichuan, where I lived for 9 years. Yeah, it's not the same as Taiwan, but they don't really use the H. So they 吃饭 instead of 吃饭, it's 吃饭 in Sichuan. 吃饭. But yeah, in Taiwan, if you're in Taiwan, you can mimic Taiwanese Mandarin. It's a bit different. It developed in certain different ways. So, although I will say, whenever I've met a Taiwanese person in the mainland, which happened, countless times, I could always understand them just fine. So I think if you speak standard Mandarin, you're not going to have too much of an issue. All right. Cool. All right, so I think I've caught up with the chat. So let me continue a little bit with these ideas here. So we went over ni hao with that chutzpah H, ni hao for hello, ta with the extra aspirated T, and hun for is or very. And like I said, most of the time it means is. For example, ta hun hao, ta hun hao. Aspirated T, the chutzpah H for hun hao, right? And then there's that same thing I told you guys before. You can never have two third tones in a row. So in reality, this is pronounced 很好, right? And we go over that in our pronunciation video on YouTube, as well as pronunciation mastery. The links are below if you want to check those out. But this sentence, 他很好, 他很好. You want to aspirate the T, 他很好, right? That means he is okay. He is okay. 他很好, right? So that combines that. Now, let's get ourselves involved. 我. That's I or me. Now, couple comments about this. One, W is not really a sound in Chinese. It's a representation of the U sound, which is just u, o. And as a result, it ends up kind of sounding like a W, but it's not, you don't consciously make the W sound. There's no w. That doesn't really exist. It's w. And that is just the u and then the o. Those are the two vowel sounds we have there. Now, you might ask, why did the creators of Pinyin do this then? And the reason is for spelling. If you just have the pronunciation as U-O, it looks weird when you have a bunch of Pinyin written out in the page. So you have I or me is third tone, 我, and it's just U-O, the U vowel, U, and the O vowel, 我. Now, another thing is that third tone is also often taught as the standalone third tone, which goes down and then up, 我. But that's not usually how people actually say it. How they actually say it is just 我. So it's like low, kind of, we call it the zombie tone, like brains. And there's a little bit of a crackliness to it. 我. Now, when you say a third tone by itself, like for example, 好, which would be a way that you could answer somebody who's asking you, you gonna be here, or can you come tomorrow at 9? You could just say 好, and then you have that little down and then up. But anytime that third tone is in a sentence, it's just quick, 好, 我, 很, right? So bear that in mind. So now we have you, me, and he. You, 你, me, 我, he, 他. All right. Now we have not, 不. Now the B in Chinese is kind of poppy and it's not voiced. So in English will say like Bob, b, b. There's actually sound that comes out, b. But in Chinese, it's just the initial B sound, but with no voicing. So just boo, boo, right? So unlike the T, which is extra aspirated with ta, you have a less voiced and less, it's kind of poppy. Boo, boo, right? That's really useful. If you sound like that, Chinese people are going to be very impressed. They're not going to notice. They're just going to be like, dang, this person sounds great. So, boo, boo, boo. That's the way you say not. So, hao is fine. Bu hao is not fine, not okay, right? No good. Bu hao. So, hao, good. Bu hao, not good. And again, you don't say bu hao. You just say bu hao. Okay. Let's go to the next one. So, 我不好. That means I am not okay. So again, third tone and third tone, but they're not next to each other, so they're still third tone. 我不好. 我不好. Now, fourth tone, third tone kind of sits where fourth tone ends, and fourth tone starts as high, if not even a little bit higher, as first tone, but then falls quickly. So when you say 我不好, 我不好, like you're actually going up. 不, 我不好, right? And by doing it that way, you'll get it more accurate. 我不好, 我不好. I'm not okay. All right. So now we've done 10 different phrases now. So let's go back. Let's check to see if there are any new questions that have come up. Let's see here. What do we got? All right. Yeah, vocal fry. Is it possible to be understood with horrible accent and tones? I mean, sure. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to say, right? Obviously, the more complicated it gets, the more likely it is that you won't be understood, because the more mistakes you make in a row, the less potentially comprehensible it becomes. Like, so, in fact, it's another argument for why you want to get pronunciation down, is that you can actually have poor grammar and good pronunciation, and you'll be more understood than great grammar and bad pronunciation. So, for example, I've heard this example many times, and it resonates with me a lot. Like somebody says, "Where is the toilet? Where is the toilet?" Right? That is the correct grammar of "where is the toilet," right? But the way it was said is kind of like, what? Maybe I got it because you said toilet at the end. But if somebody came up to you and said, "Toilet is where?" Perfect pronunciation. Toilet is where? You'd be like, okay, you wouldn't even occur to you that it's not the right grammar. You'd just go, oh, yeah, the toilet's over there, right? And by the way, it's a good example of how Chinese is simpler than English, because you understand why somebody says toilet is where, toilet is there. Like in English, you'd say that the toilet is there, right? You'd say that object is in location. In Chinese, you also ask in the same way. You would say, toilet is where? So, 厕所在哪儿? 厕所在那儿. Right? That's how you would say that in Chinese. It's the same structure for the question and the answer, whereas in English we flip it around. Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent, but yeah. All right. See you, Erica. Thank you for going in. Why not add 是 in I am not okay? It's just unnecessary. And I mean, yeah, you just don't. This doesn't sound right. I mean, you could say, if you said 我是不好的, 我是不好的, that's that 是的 instruction, in a construction. But in that case, 我是不好的, you're referring to how you were as a detail of the past. And see, this is why you don't study grammar, because I can explain it now that I'm fluent in the language, but explaining why something isn't the case is almost impossible because there's infinite ways that things can be wrong, but there's a finite way that things can be right. So here's all I'll say. If you just say 我不好, that just means I'm not okay, and that's correct. And 我是不好 feels weird. It's like, it just, when you learn grammar the right way, which is to say by getting lots of understandable messages into your eyes and ears, then you don't know why something is wrong intellectually. It just feels wrong. In the same way, if someone said, I have seen Paul yesterday, there's some grammar nerds will know exactly why that's wrong. I don't know why it's wrong. It just feels wrong, right? I saw Paul yesterday. And so we want to facilitate that in our learners, right? So that's what we want here. We don't want to have that whole, like really focus on all the grammar. It just 我是不好. It just sounds wrong. And so yeah, okay. What is the difference between 太 and 很? Just for simplicity, yes. So my teacher always say that adjectives have already the be. So how is okay good, but also be okay, be good? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but I suppose that's correct. So 太 and 很. 很 connects adjectives to nouns. So 我很好. I am fine, right? Or 他很好. He is fine, right? That case, it's just is, and it's connecting. Now, if you put it in front of a psychological verb like I, meaning love, or 恨, meaning hate, 我很恨他, right? I really hate him, right? That would be, and then it's just a modifier, and then 太 means to, like T-O-O. So, and it can mean it literally or hyperbolically. So, for example, I could be pouring coffee into my mug, and it's 好,太多了. 多 means many or much, so 太多了, if it goes over the edge, would literally mean too much, right? But a lot of times somebody will say something like 他太好了. He's too good, or he's too fine, right? Or this situation is too great. It doesn't literally mean that. It's just a way of saying excellent. Oh, this is awesome, right? And so that's kind of how 太 works. It's a degree higher than 很, and 很 also is used in that way I described as connecting nouns and adjectives. Can you see the Chinese characters going through another reform sometime in the future? I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. Probably not. Because think about the time when they simplified it. It was just after the Maoist revolution in 1949, and it was like they simplified the characters in the 50s. And it's like, well, at that time, China was unbelievably poor and in a totalitarian communist dictatorship, right? And also, I mean, today they're backsliding a bit right now. But what I will say is that what China is today is nothing like it was then. Now, it's still the Communist Party of China, but like you got to remember that there have been some serious changes that happened after Mao died, and it's not the same place. It's obviously a big economy now. Like when it was properly under the totalitarian rule of the Maoists, like the economy couldn't grow because they kept making terrible decisions like the Great Leap Forward. Like, let's just produce only steel. And it's like, oh yeah, an economy needs more than that, you dum-dums. And that decision led to the biggest famine in world history. So they didn't have a lot of resources. They weren't able to learn with the same sort of alacrity as they are now. So I doubt that they'll simplify the characters again, because now China's much richer. They have better education. Everybody's fed. Like even in some rural areas, people are still impoverished to the point of some food insecurity, but not really. I mean, most places in China, people at least have their essentials dealt with. And when you have your essentials dealt with, there's no need to like simplify the language to make it easier for poor rural people to be able to get literate. So I would say unlikely, but who knows? All right. I have to focus on grammar from my teacher patterns, as they call it, has been kicking my butt. Recognizing is easy, speaking and therefore creating is difficult. Any advice? Lots of comprehensible input, Robert. Yeah, studying grammar and you're exactly right. It's what happens. So you learn the grammatical pattern, and then you go to speak, and it's just not there for you. So the one thing you could do if you really want to get the pattern down is learn the pattern. You could even get ChatGPT to write a bunch of sentences. Now it's tricky because this is why Mandarin Blueprint. It's why we built Mandarin Blueprint, because this is a really hard problem to solve, and we decided, damn it, we're going to solve it. Which is that if you want to get a grammar pattern down, the best thing to do is see a ton of sentences with that grammar pattern, right? And understand all of them. And then what will happen is your unconscious mind will slowly pick it up. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah. And make sure there's an emotional connection. If you see it in the context of a TV show, or it's in the context of an interaction you're having with somebody, all the better. The more emotionally connected it is, the more your highly evolved language module picks up on the pattern unconsciously. So the ideal thing to do would be like, okay, hey, ChatGPT, give me 30 sentences that all have this same pattern, right? The problem is, though, yes, it'll do that, and it'll do that decently well, not perfectly, which is another frustrating thing about it, but it'll do it decently well, but it doesn't know what characters you know, right? I even tried to train it. I tried to train generative AI to be like, okay, if you knew only these 100 characters, what sentences could you make? It just couldn't do it. Whatever it is about the large language models, it can't restrict itself in that way. And so what Mandarin Blueprint, what we did is we said, okay, we're only going to introduce sentences after you've learned the characters and learned the words, and we're going to teach character by character. So every character you learn, we're going to cross-reference that with everything you learned previously and see, are there any compound words you can make with this character and say it's character 101, okay? Character 101 and the previous 100 characters, are there any high-frequency compound words of 2 or more characters you can make? Yes? Okay, we'll teach you that word now. And then when you get to a certain point, we then say, okay, now the words you've learned, you can create a sentence with that. And that is a comprehensible sentence of Chinese characters and words that you can read without pinyin because you've learned the characters properly. And so it allows you to get comprehensible input at the earliest possible point, and be sure that all the things you're reading are made up of characters and words you already know, because we made the curriculum, so we know what words and characters you know. And so the point is that it's this intractable problem of, okay, yes, I can find lots of input, I can find lots of sentences, I can get lots of things that fit this grammar pattern, but I can't get it perfectly tailored to what I know, and so it's mostly useless to me. Because if you don't know a character, it just doesn't register. It's just like a question mark. So you have to come up with a good way to learn characters. You have to learn characters in a good order. You have to see sentences that are made up of characters and words you already know, and that is a headache to do, unless you use Mandarin Blueprint. Moo7, how many characters will be covered in the Kickstarter course? I never actually analyzed it for the characters, because the Mandarin Speaking and Listening Kickstarter is decidedly for speaking and listening. It's like a listen and repeat set of audio files, and it's not, we have the characters in it. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I would guess it's probably something like 200 or 300 characters. But if you want to learn characters, take the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge, which gives you access to the first 3 phases of the blueprint. The blueprint is where we teach characters, and we teach characters really well. Like, we teach them so that you'll never forget them, and it's really fun because we use like old Greek mnemonic techniques and all of that stuff. It's great. It's a good time, and that's what you should do if you want to learn characters. And you can take the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge for $7, and it walks you through a 15 or a 30-day challenge. By the end of it, you know 105 characters. Actually, no, you know 124 characters, and you start reading sentences in Chinese. So if you're interested in learning characters, that's what you would do. The Mandarin Speaking and Listening Kickstarter is about building up the basics top down of the most basic phrases, and so that's what you would do there. Okay. What's your favorite Chinese joke? I mean, I've heard this one where it's like a boyfriend and a girlfriend are talking to each other, and the boyfriend says, "Eh, 我以为你在减肥." I thought mistakenly that you were trying to lose weight because she's eating a bunch of food, and she's like, 需要吃多才会有能力，减肥是需要能力的, right? So like, I need food to have the energy to be willing to lose weight. It's kind of a silly, like, it's sort of, it's not like laugh out loud funny, but it gives you an insight into Chinese people are very into wordplay with humor. There's a lot of wordplay in the humor, and it's fun to discover that. It's hard to explain because humor is like the highest level of language. It's very hard to explain sometimes, but that there's a lot of stuff like that. I don't know if that's my favorite joke, but at that very moment, that seems about right. I do need a better way to learn characters. That's the most difficult part for me. Yeah, totally. Well, in a future live stream, I'm going to go over how to learn characters. And, we'll go through the first 10 characters of the blueprint. But if you want to get started now, mandarinblueprint.com/challenge. And you can check that out. Okay, so let me switch back to the screen here. And here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to do another 5 or so phrases from the Kickstarter. And then we'll wrap up for today. This is an experimental first day of live streaming, and I really appreciate that you guys showed up and that we can, check this out. So let me just keep going. So we left off at 我不好, which means I'm not okay. Okay, fine, cool. So that's how. So if we wanted to say he's not okay, well, what would we say? 他不好, 他不好, right? So he is not okay, and yeah, the Chinese, the is there gonna gets dropped, but don't worry about the grammar. Again, like what's important here is just to know this is right, not why is it right. Why is it right is an unanswerable question. It's like there's the etymology of Chinese somehow. Like you'd have to get down to like some weird evolutionary thing with language. Just it is right. 他不好, 他不好. Okay, now. In Chinese, you can say, to ask a yes or no question, one of the ways you can ask a yes or no question is to say, put the adjective and repeat it, and put 不 in the middle. 好不好? 好不好? And that would literally mean okay or not okay. And in reality, when people say it, it's usually 好不好? 好不好? So it's not really 好不好, it's 好不好. The 不 ends up just being a fifth tone. And with fifth tone, when a fifth tone, they call it the neutral tone, it reacts to the tone before it. So it's very short. Fifth tone is always very short, but whatever tone came before it influences how fifth tone sounds. So third tone is low, 好. Therefore, the fifth tone will be high in contrast. 好不好? 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 Right? And that's just a way of saying okay or not. And then to put that into a sentence, how would you say, are you okay, or you okay, not okay? Well, it would just be 你好不好? 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 Right? And again, if you say that fast, 你好. 你, because there's 2 third tones in a row here, so it's 你好不好? 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 Are you okay? Literally, you okay, not okay. 你好不好? If you wanted to respond, I'm not okay, 我不好. 我不好. I'm not okay, 我不好. Is he okay? 他好不好? Again, aspirated T. 他好不好? Is he okay? And then if you want to say he's fine, he's okay, 他很好. 他很好. 很, get that? 很好. 他很好. Right? Then she or her. 他, also the same as he. Right? So in China, the character is different, but the sound is all the same. So like, that whole pronoun conversation we've been having in the West culturally for the past, decade or so, they don't have, they don't have that in China because it's all just ta, ta. And so then, we say, she is okay, 她很好. Same as he is okay, 她很好. Is she okay, 她好不好? Good, not good. Fine, not fine. Okay, not okay. 她好不好? She's not okay. 她不好. 她不好. And then we'll finish this up. She, or just again, sorry, goodbye, which is literally again see. 再见. And so that's probably where we'll wrap it up. I'll just show you a little bit about what I've been doing here, and then I'll answer the final few questions. This is on the Speaking and Listening Kickstarter. We've got some questions from people, and all the lessons have a comment section. All the courses have several lessons. The Kickstarter is the promotion we're going to be running later this month. We have a special bonus that we're going to be including with it. If you would like to hear about it, it's going to be sort of like the last week of June. If you would like to hear about the Kickstarter promotion, you can go to the link in the description of this live stream. That is a link to our scorecard. You can take a little quiz, and it will give you your Mandarin fluency scorecard. If you're a beginner, your quiz will basically be saying you need some work, but we'll give you, by taking the scorecard, you'll get taking the quiz to receive your scorecard, you'll get a very detailed explanation of what your next step should be with learning Chinese. And then also what we'll do is we'll put you on the wait list to hear about the Kickstarter. So when we do the Kickstarter promotion later this month, you can check that out. And also, it's like we're going to, offer a minor discount and give you a little special bonus that I'll talk about later. But it's also, it's $57 is the normal price. So if you want to just go get it, there's also a link to the Mandarin Speaking and Listening Kickstarter. It's got over 1,100 phrases, all with listen and repeat audio, a learn, listen, and repeat audio, a think and produce audio, an immersion audio file. Every lesson has these. And they also come along with corresponding spaced repetition software flashcards you can do on the Traverse app. So it's very comprehensive in terms of just getting you off the ground, kickstarting your Mandarin, practicing your pronunciation training. Of course, it's a complement to our whole suite of courses, but check it out. It's pretty cool, and you can find out about the promotion simply by taking that scorecard quiz, and that will automatically put you on the wait list. And it's also very useful. So I'll just finish this up with looking at the final questions you guys have mentioned. Let's see here. All Chinese characters use the same 200 components. It's not exactly correct. So there are 217 radicals. But what's a radical? Well, a radical is a somewhat arbitrary designation made by scholars, Chinese scholars, to organize paper dictionaries, right? So you need to have some kind of system for organizing a paper dictionary, especially before there was pinyin, right? Because pinyin was only created in the 50s. Pinyin is the romanization of Chinese. It's all this stuff on the screen here that is this hao is pinyin, ni hao, that's pinyin. And so the radical system was created. The radical system was created to help organize paper dictionaries. I prefer to think of them as components because if you do that, it's less restricted by this arbitrary thing that scholars did at one point. So it is probably more than 200 total components, but they're all related. There's only 6 basic strokes. So, many of them are combined, and there are characters that have a lot of different strokes, but generally speaking, I do agree mostly with Golazo there that it's not that hard. Learning the components, especially if you have a good mnemonic system like we teach in the blueprint. Saying 我爱你 is 我爱你. 我也爱你. Which one would you recommend first between the Kickstarter and the challenge? It depends on what you would rather do. If you're focused on long-term proficiency, then take the challenge. if you just want to like learn some basic phrases and also build up your speaking chops from the beginning, take the Kickstarter. Ideally, do it all. Like it's like think about what it is that what's your why for learning Chinese, right? Going back a little bit to some of the stuff that I was talking about previously, if I think about what's my why for learning Chinese, I did business in China. These guys, especially this guy here on the right, he is a headhunting agency, and we worked with them to help find some Chinese people to work with us. And the guys on the left were these older guys. They were such gems. They're like always giving tea, super friendly. They invited us out for tea several times. Super nice guys. I loved doing business in China. I got the Sichuan's first ever entrepreneurship visa. So starting a business in China was something that Chinese opened up for me. You're not going to do that without some pretty dang good Chinese. So I knew I had to work really hard at it, and I wanted to take it very far for things like this. I mean, I obviously didn't know this was going to happen, but it only could have happened. These types of things only could have happened if I really went into it. But if you're only going to visit China for a little bit, then get the Kickstarter. But really, if you want to get good and do things like have the media taking pictures of you and doing gigs, giving speeches in Chinese to Chinese people, to hosting events. This is me being featured in the Hello Chengdu magazine. It's the featured image. This is us getting second place at the entrepreneurship competition. If you want to have like rich experiences like this, 中文难. Chinese is hard. That's what it says in the background. If you want to have these kind of peak experiences while traveling in China, you're gonna need to go out with Chinese friends, eat hot pot with them, have a good time in that way. You're gonna need to take it far. But if you're just traveling around for a little bit, then just do one of the simpler ones, if that makes sense. So my point is just there's a lot of different things you can do. Oh, like I put this in here because this is a computer repair shop. 笔记本快修, which means fast fixing of your computer. I put this in because I remember this place because first of all, like look at that place. It's like wild. It's like very all over the place, lots of stuff going on. Super cheap, and I was very happy that I could just go in there, talk to them about my computer, get it all fixed, and they were, that's the type of experience that if you get good, you can easily function in Chinese society, right? And people are like, gosh, if there's one thing I really hope that people get out of Mandarin Blueprint and some of the material that we put out is that don't let like sort of the large mass media portrayal of China convince you that that's all there is to it. There's more to it. Like the way that life is in China, the way the people are, the philosophies that have traveled through the millennia, it's just not as simple. It's not to say that there aren't things that are true about, like, say, geopolitical interests being at odds with each other. That doesn't change the fact that, like, man, Chinese people are very interesting to meet and talk to, and very motivated and generous. It's really very cool. This is when we were Luke and I were speaking at an event for a Mid-Autumn Festival. A couple of friends there. So this is all the point I'm trying to make here is just that how far you want to take it is how you should think about whether or not to do the challenge or the Kickstarter. If you want to do it all, then you're going to need to learn characters, words, get lots of comprehensible input, practice your speaking and listening, practice your situational Chinese, get lots of immersion, and more than anything, you have to define your why. Why am I doing this? Make it your identity. Make it something that it's like, okay, I'm a Chinese learner now. That's who I am, right? If the problem that people have when they're trying to lose weight, for example, is they say, I need to lose 20 pounds, right? But that's the wrong way to think about it, because losing 20 pounds is an outcome of something that a person with an athlete's identity naturally comes to because it's who they are, right? So if you start with the outcome, like I want to be able to speak 100 phrases, it's not that you couldn't do it, it's just that you won't keep it because the underlying motivation, the why, the identity, and the processes of a person who has that identity haven't yet been established. This is James Clear Atomic Habits ideas, and I found it to be particularly poignant. Okay. Thank you for recommending the challenge course, Vagometer. No ma at the end. You can put ma at the end of a sentence for yes or no. I know you're talking about the 好不好 or 他好不好. It's one or the other, right? So you can say 他好吗 or 他好不好, but you can't use both. You can't use both together. So it's a yes or no question in that way, but either one is fine. So they're both saying the same thing. In certain situations, there's some subtle differences between the two, but essentially, grammatically speaking, they mean the exact same thing. Mr. Gautama, love your content. It'd be great if you made a video about good Chinese shows or movies that you like. Any recommendations? 活着. Yeah. Chinese movie. I love that movie. It's about a time in the Cultural Revolution. It's very deep. It's very like, what is it? It's kind of like it's dark. So I mean, you know, obviously, if you're not into like dark movies, then don't watch it. But it's got that kind of Gulag Archipelago vibe of like, okay, we're in a terrible, terrible situation. How can we find a way to still live and be, you know, human, right? So it's literally called To Live, 活着, right? That's pretty cool. All right, let's continuing here. Did the contents of the challenge expire after those 14 days? You keep access to it for 45 days. And at the end, if you want to keep the first 3 phases, we have a little offer for you. You can keep it for a very reasonable price. All right, Maria, thank you for telling me that sharing the pictures is inspiring, because that's one of those things that, you know, I thought other people might like, because at the end of the day, you guys have a dream outcome. You want to become fluent in Chinese, right? That's what you want, I would imagine. Otherwise, why are you watching our channel? So you need to know what doors it will open for you. You know, I mean, just before I finish up, I'll just go through a couple more things, because it's very interesting stuff. Like, you know, all these things that happened to me over this time, really, you know, it was pretty epic. So this is, everybody just called her Taozi, which means peach. And she is the best guzheng player I've ever seen. So guzheng is that long stringed instrument that you pluck. And I played a concert with her at the Conservatory of Music in Chengdu. And she's just incredible. So I saw her at this event. We were there separately for different reasons, but then I ran into her and I was like, oh, hey, what's up? So got that picture. This was the Hello Chengdu magazine, where I was talking about the character learning method. And because Chinese people were very interested in this, because the way they learn characters is they go over the same, they did just write it over and over. And they, of course, they had the spoken language down because they were children and they were completely immersed in it for 5 years or so before they even go to school. So it's a little bit easier for them to link the spoken sound to the written sound, which is not so easy for the it's just not easy at all for an adult foreigner, right? And so they were always very interested in this, and so I got a lot of attention. So this is the article, got it both in English and Chinese, which was great. Oh, and by the way, this is the whole, I'm pretty sure, let me, pretty sure this is the entire thing. It's a little bit small for me. My eyes are getting a little bit weaker these days. But look at all this English, a page and a half of English and just half a page of Chinese. So you get a lot of content in there. This woman I met, she was a retired broadcaster, and we were talking about enunciation and Chinese pronunciation of various things. That was kind of cool, meeting her. Very 素质. She had a lot of 素质, which is the Chinese word for like class or culture, you know. And if you want to say that somebody is like kind of, I don't know, something like the equivalent of like white trash. Of course, it's not white trash, but like if you were to refer to that type of person, you would call them. You'd say 他没有素质. He doesn't have any kind of like 素质 is like a basic sense of kind of societal awareness and culture, if that makes sense. So she had a lot of 素质. This is a buddy of mine. He did a lot of videography, so I met him through that. Enjoying a beer and some food at his house. We had a lively political discussion. And that's the thing, by the way, Chinese people are more than happy to talk about politics. Like, you wouldn't think that based on the fact that their internet is censored and everybody thinks that, like, I mean, not everybody is a member of the CCP, right? Like, they all have their own opinions. And so, I remember what I said to them that day is I said the biggest mistake that we make when we're thinking about China is that we assume as Westerners that, like, oh, you know, you guys, because you don't have like free speech and free expression, therefore, you know, we don't have to listen to what you guys are saying because it's just propagandized. You're all just propagandized. And it's like, no, it's more nuanced than that. Like, there are certainly things that the government tries to censor and tries to keep out of the minds of many people, right? But that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean they're always successful. And because a lot of Chinese people travel all over the world, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of Chinese people all over the world. When they're not in China, the internet's not blocked, so people often know what's going on in a general sense. And so my point just being that, you know, they're very interesting, very, like, fascinating how much people can be, they can surprise you. And in my experience, Chinese people, like, were great with that. This is my band playing in a bar in Chengdu. Great fun, so much fun. And so I just wanted to share a few more of these things because, like I said, you know, we are in a situation where you guys are in a situation, I should say, where you want to learn Chinese, you have this dream outcome, right? But you need to see what doors will open for you when you get there. And I hope that today's experience has been something that will, yeah, like Maria said, be a bit inspiring. Okay, cool. How's the beer in China? Yeah, the beer is, there's a nostalgia to it, I'll just say that. All right, everyone, just final reminder, if you want to get access to the Kickstarter, you can get access to it right now at the link below. And you can also get access at the promotion we're having at the end of the month. The link below is for a quiz that will give you a Mandarin fluency scorecard. It's very useful. You take that quiz. It takes about 2-3 minutes to do. You'll get a written explanation of what you should do next to your email. And then by signing up for the scorecard, you'll be added to the short list to get the Kickstarter. Get the Kickstarter promotion. We've got a special bonus that is going to be coming out. I'll leave that a secret for now. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And 再见.